All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the regular Moab City Council meeting to order on October 22nd, 2024 at 6:02 p.m. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Nathaniel, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Sorry, I forgot to ask you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Nathaniel. All right, next up, we have public comments. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move right back to Nathaniel on our department updates from the Victim Advocate Program. And thank you all for responding with some information that Nathaniel wanted to hear. Share with
I
you.
emailed the council last week asking if they had any questions that I could prepare, and nobody responded. So yesterday I emailed them again and I said that if they didn't ask any questions, I would just tell Park Service stories for about 15 minutes.
Which
Everyone instantly responded with questions. So I think it's about incentives is what we're talking about.
That scared me.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is one of my twice annual reports that's required by our state funding. It's a governing body report is what it's called. I'm one of the victim advocates. As just a refresher for everyone, we're the victim advocates for the Moab City Police, the Grand County Sheriff's Office, the Prosecutor's Office, and the Children's Justice Center. So we work with a wide range of criminal victimizations, any kind of violent crime, things like that. And we follow cases from the criminal incident all the way through to whatever the prosecution outcome is, if it gets that far. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I think it's a good moment to kind of reflect on just how common abusive relationships are. We have some stereotypical ideas of what an abusive relationship looks like, and that's not very accurate. A lot of people live every day in relationships that have certain levels of physical or emotional abuse. And it's just important to recognize that everyone deserves to be in a safe and happy relationship. No matter what, you don't deserve that kind of abuse. And that goes for everybody in the relationship. You know, that also goes for people who are perpetrators of domestic violence. Everyone needs a safe and loving place to live. And no matter what, if that's not what you're experiencing, I hope you'll reach out for help, whether that means going through the law enforcement avenue in the criminal justice system or reaching out to an organization like Seek Haven. If you're experiencing any kind of abuse or violence in a relationship, please ask for help. If you'd like, you don't have to be alone. There's a lot of resources out there, and help can take a lot of different forms. And I think that's worth just throwing out there. That actually leads right into an update that I wanted to share with you guys. We're in the process of applying to participate in what's called a coordinated community response team. We apply to an organization that provides technical assistance in this program. And what it does is it creates a multidisciplinary team that allows us to review domestic violence cases from a more community perspective. So the value of a multidisciplinary team is that you have people who work in law enforcement and prosecution and mental health and medicine and advocacy. Every single one of those people can look at the exact same case and have a completely different perspective. So if we bring that team of people together under an agreement between the different agencies, we can review cases and really come up with hopefully more successful outcomes for everybody involved. So we're right now completing the application process for that. I don't know when we'll hear if we've been selected for it. I think there's a good chance we will be, because Moab is such a small community and we have a lot of stuff going on. We also have a lot going for us. That's going to be really exciting, though. I think it's going to be great. We have support from the county and the sheriff's office and medical world and mental health. And I think it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity to be able to review domestic violence cases through that sort of more comprehensive lens. So I'm feeling optimistic about that. Other updates, you know, you guys always ask about what our what our numbers are and what kind of trends we're seeing. Our numbers, they really remain strikingly consistent. Each quarter, we tend to have about 70 cases that we're working on. The last quarter that I have data for off the top of my head would be the last quarter of the last fiscal year. So that's April, May, and June. Our numbers were actually down a little bit. We were closer into the 50s that quarter. And of course, our first thought was maybe we have a problem with our data collection. We talked to some of the other organizations in the area, and actually numbers do seem like they were a little down that quarter. That's just a blip. I wouldn't read into that one way or the other. But it was kind of interesting that our numbers were a little bit down for the last quarter of the fiscal year. Now, that breakdown, though, it still stays pretty consistent. About a third of our cases are domestic violence or intimate partner violence. We have a handful of sexual assaults, a little bit of child abuse cases that we work on, and then kind of a scattering of other kinds of assault and violent crime. But domestic violence does remain the primary sort of criminal victimization that we respond to. In terms of identifying trends, I'm becoming really hesitant to try to speak to that because our numbers are really low anyway. So like Jason, you had asked if we were seeing any concerning trends with like violence or awful things happening to like teenagers in the community. If we had a single teen suicide in this community, it would be a massive blow to everybody. And so going from 0 to 1, that's a huge change. Is that a trend? I don't know. Like that's really hard to speak to. So I think that you need a better bird's eye view than what I'm able to provide to get that kind of trend. But I would look to statewide data is kind of what I was realizing as I was trying to parse out some useful answers for you. I guess what I would say is that I'm not seeing any drastic changes one way or the other. And I mean, like a reduction would be great, but that also means we're not seeing an increase in crime. So that's, you know, that's not a bad thing either. I still wish more stuff was getting reported. You know, you think about how many cases of sexual assault get reported versus how many instances are actually happening in this community. And I mean, there's a huge disparity. That's true for a lot of different crimes, but especially sexual assault and child abuse and domestic violence. So if people know more about what resources are available and they feel safe and they know that we're going to handle their cases well, I think that'll help. A good example of that, we've actually got a couple of cases right now that are involving people who are incarcerated in the jail. Now, we're not advocating for them on their cases that led to them being incarcerated, but they happen to be incarcerated and also have experienced criminal victimization. And I think the reason that suddenly changed is that we were working on one particular case in the jail that was very intensive. We were meeting with an individual almost every day for about a week while they were incarcerated. And so people were seeing advocates regularly coming into the jail to meet with inmates. And I think it just communicates that's something that we're willing to do, that we're not going to, you know, we're not going to think ill of somebody just because they also happen to be incarcerated. And lo and behold, almost immediately, we got 2 more requests from inmates to meet with them. And I think that's really wonderful because it means that that idea is getting out there, that we're an available resource. So when I think bigger picture about trying to reach more people who are experiencing any kind of violent criminal victimization, I think a big part of that is just that kind of word of mouth, making sure that people realize that the resources are available and realize that the response can take a lot of different shapes. I think a lot of people still think that if they call us, that automatically means the police are involved and that is a one-way road to prosecution. And that's just not the case. Like, we really do let people lead where they want to go with an experience they've had. Obviously, there are some exceptions. If somebody is perpetrating child abuse, we're gonna prosecute that. Things like that. There are some crimes that we're just gonna take through prosecution. But by and large, if somebody's been harmed in this community and they feel very strongly about how they want the case handled, we may still prosecute it. There's a public safety issue that we have to address, but we're going to do our best to make sure that the victims of crime have a voice and are empowered through that process. And I think that's really important for people to keep in mind. You guys always ask how supported we are and how we're doing with the work. And I really appreciate that. I will say, it's hard for me to imagine being more supported. Like I never have any problems with how we're treated within the city. We don't ask for much, but we pretty much get whatever we ask for, and it's pretty wonderful. When we need supplies, we can get supplies. We're pretty well staffed for our workload, and it just feels really wonderful that we have that kind of support from the surrounding community. In terms of our own mental health, that's a constant thing, right? Like the officers were exposed to a lot of vicarious trauma, and we take that really seriously, and we try to take a very aggressive approach to making sure that we're maintaining our mental health. I see a therapist every 2 weeks. Like we're pretty aggressive about that, and I think that's really important to the long-term sustainability of this program and our ability to do this kind of work. There's a question about what was it, red vines or Twizzlers?
Red vines.
I think probably Twizzlers, but
Okay.
that's only because my hometown is where the Twizzler factory used to be. I don't know if it's still in Farmington, New Mexico, but I feel like I'm obligated to say Twizzlers. Something else that's kind of interesting, we started trying to track our hot sauce consumption because we realized we went through a lot of it. Between the two of us, I think we probably go through about a gallon of hot sauce a year.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
funding
yeah.
that?
I think the capsaicin probably helps with vicarious trauma. I think it helps clear the stress hormones from our brains.
Clear some.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anything else for
Yeah,
Nathaniel?
anything else that was pressing you guys wanted to see me address?
Yeah, I'm wondering, as we're starting to think about the next legislative session, if you know of anything that
You-
might be coming up.
I remember that. I don't follow advanced legislative sessions much, mostly just due to honestly, a little bit of a lack of interest. I'm more focused in on what the current laws are. There was an interesting change though. If you guys recall, last year, a law was passed that required when there's a domestic violence incident that officers provide a risk assessment to that person. And if the victim scores high risk, they are required to refer them to the community crisis center. In that case, that would be Sea Haven, who we work so closely with. The side effect of that, though, was that a lot of officers stopped referring cases to the system-based advocates. So remember, system-based advocates are like us. We're working under the umbrella of a law enforcement organization, whereas Sea Haven is a community-based advocate organization and is completely independent. So the side effect of that law was that we just weren't getting as many referrals. They actually changed that law and they put it into the statute that a referral is required both to the community-based organization and your system-based advocates. No one told us that that law had changed, and we started getting a lot more phone calls, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense until about 2 months later at a statewide training session, they updated us on it. But that's really wonderful. So in terms of future legislation, I think that's always being tweaked, especially because that's a relatively new law, having us work so closely and having that referral to services be mandatory for people experiencing domestic violence. I would expect to see more tweaks and adjustments to that. But I don't know. I don't know what else is in the pipeline. I wish I did, but I just don't pay too much attention to it.
Yep. Luke?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you know like an approximate breakdown between like DV and SA calls of residents versus non-residents.
It's almost entirely residents or at least people who are here working for long spans of time. I think one of the issues is that a lot of people, if you're on vacation and experience criminal victimization, your brain doesn't tell you, oh, I need to report this in the jurisdiction where it occurred. You're going to go back home. You're going to think about what you experienced and then decide whether or not you want to report it. But that could be days or weeks later. And so the interest in reporting it may have faded. We do sometimes get cases referred by departments across the nation. Somebody goes home, reports that something happened to them. They get interviewed by their home department, and then the case does get referred to us. But I mean, we're talking maybe a handful a year, a half dozen. I mean, it's tiny numbers. But again, I don't think that's at all accurate. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that happens to people when they're on vacation. We're just not hearing about it.
Yeah, thank you. And since it is primarily local residents, like in these calls, aside from kind of the typical relationship dynamics associated with some of these abusive relationships, what do you think are like the biggest barriers in having local residents reach out for assistance?
I mean, there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it, is kind of what I spoke to earlier, that there's some fear about what the experience is going to be like, especially with stuff like sexual assault. When someone reports a new sexual assault to us and we explain to them that we don't have to have them talk to an officer if they don't want to, that alone is usually a pretty big surprise to people. So I think that people have a fear that they're going to immediately lose control of the experience. A lot of stuff like that. There's still a lot of shame around. There's a fear that you're not going to be believed. The world's changing really fast, but it hasn't changed that fast. And it wasn't that long ago that if someone came forward and reported any kind of violence within a relationship or of a sexual nature, we would treat their report with skepticism. Any other report we're very willing to believe, but that wasn't that long ago that was still a problem. So I think that still kind of stays in people's minds. The other thing is that, you know, if you have a case that you do want to take all the way through prosecution, that's not a fun experience. We try to make it as okay as possible for people, but at best it is still going to be a little painful. And I hate that that's how it has to be, but that's the system that we work within. So if you've experienced criminal victimization, especially intimate partner or sexual assault, you've got that fear of initially reporting what the response is going to be. Are they even going to believe me? You're afraid you might lose control of the entire case as soon as you've reported to the police. And then you're also wondering what that process is going to be like if it goes through prosecution. When somebody experiences victimizations, one of the first questions they almost universally have is, what's coming next? What will immediately happen? Am I going to have to appear in court? How scary is this going to be? So that's a lot of stuff that gets piled on somebody on top of what was already a really traumatic experience that they're trying to cope with. And then we expect them to have the wherewithal and the capacity and the bandwidth to come talk to an officer. Like, it's kind of a big ask. I think that's one of the values of having advocates, though, right? Like we can offer a soft landing to people to get into the criminal justice process and see how they're feeling and see where they want to go with it.
Thank you. And kind of just dovetailing off that, is there anything that you can think of that the city can provide or do to help like raise awareness of some of like the services and kind of push back against some of the misconceptions related to accessing services? And then if somebody does choose to actually proceed through like the criminal process, resources that the city can provide or anything to help make that a little bit less of a rough of a ride?
I think outreach is probably a big part of it, and we are trying to get more involved with Sea Haven in their outreach efforts. I don't know that this is done every year, but 2 years ago, I was actually out of town when this happened, but for Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April, they had a panel discussion that they hosted with experts that are part of our response team to sexual assaults, and they invited community members to participate and ask questions and learn about it. I think stuff like that is huge. But you know, at the end of the day, it's people's experience. Like, we can do as much outreach as we want, and we can tell people as much information as we possibly can about what the process is. But if they have a close friend who took a case through the criminal justice system and had a terrible experience, we can't overcome that. Like that kind of, or their own firsthand experience, like that is really hard to speak to and say, no, but it'll be different. Trust us. I hope that they will. But you know, it's a tough sell. So I think awareness and outreach, but I really, I'm feeling like word of mouth is huge, and just having people's experiences overall, if they can move forward from the trauma and get on a path to recovery. And if part of that experience was working with us that got them on that path, I think that speaks volumes.
Any other questions or comments for Nathaniel?
Has our medical community increased the number of same nurses that practice in the area?
we have dramatically, we also lose them constantly, like all professionals in this community. I think we have 4 right now,
Okay.
which is, that's pretty solid. We don't always have a sane nurse immediately available, but we haven't recently had a sexual assault case that we had to wait more than a few hours. 2 years ago, we had a case that had to go all the way to Richfield to get a sex assault exam. And that's, that's really not ideal. But recently we've been able to get people in for an exam, same day and in this community.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It's
Thank you
always
so
good to hear
Thanks,
from you.
Nathaniel. Yeah.
Really appreciate the work. We're very lucky to have you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, next up, 3.2, Utility Department update with Obi. And this is regarding a new noticing requirement.
Yes.
Did I get that right, Obi?
Yeah, it's about the lead service line, survey. Hi. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about the EPA mandated lead service line survey, that I turned in last week, and the notification requirements contained in it. So there's several sources of, lead contamination in water systems. The most concerning is obviously a pipe that's fully lead, right? The EPA wants all water providers to locate and ultimately remove all of these lines. In the survey, the EPA had us categorize all of our lines in our system into 4 categories: lead, non-lead, galvanized requiring replacement, which are galvanized lines that are downstream of lead, because galvanized lines, lead can stick to galvanized lines and ultimately act like a lead line. So those need to be removed. And then unknown. They also define service lines as from the main to the building. They're excluding goosenecks. I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about goosenecks. They're a short piece of lead pipe that goes from the main to the service to make a connection. And for now, those are being excluded. They may be included in the future. So for our purposes, we only are responsible up to the meter. And so then the customer is responsible from the meter to, and so the meter is generally located about the property line. So from the property line to the homeowner or business's house is theirs. And we have not kept track of records for the customer side of the service. We have pretty good records for our side of the service. And we have no records of lead lines in our side of the service, or really any institutional knowledge of lead lines. Plumbers, Conrad here. This is Conrad, the lead for the water department. I should have introduced him. Sorry, Conrad.
You good? It's all good.
Yeah. But we don't, like I said, we don't have any data for the customer side. We can take anything built after 1989 when lead was banned from all services across the country. That was about 720 services that fit that category, which leaves about at least 1,520 services in the unknown category. So they also treat the whole service line as one of those 4 categories. So any part of that service line is unknown, the whole service line is unknown. Does that make sense? Any part of it's lead, it's lead. So we have no lead that we know of, no galvanized that needs replacing that we know of, but we do have the 1,520 service lines that fit that unknown category. Part of this mandate, they are making us notify all customers in those 3 categories by mail, or we can hand it out, that they have a line that is unknown and possibly lead, is kind of the phrasing we have to use. By the 15th of this month, we're hoping, working with Lisa, to get a letter together. I'm hoping to get it out by the 1st, so about 10 days. We just kind of wanted to come down and let you guys know that you're probably going to be getting a lot of calls from people about.
What can they do, Obi, if I get a letter?
Yeah, is there an easy way for homeowners to check to see if?
Yes, so there will be on the letter, there will be resources, links to resources to help them check their own service line in their house.
Okay.
There'll be a bunch of resources about if they're worried about lead, what they can do. One of them's like flushing the line. So lead is primarily why it's so such a problem with service lines is service lines have a lot of dead time. So there's a lot of time where the water just sits in the line, whereas in the main, it's constantly running generally, right? But in the service line, it has a lot of time to sit there, so it has more time to like absorb those lead, that lead line, which like I said, I don't expect to find a lot of them, but we might. So you can flush the line. That's something you can do in the morning, use with cold water. And that will help. And there's other resources. I'm sorry, I didn't bring that paper with me. I would have had more things you can do if you're worried about lead filters. Make sure your filter is a lead specific filter. And yeah, the letter will have all that on there.
And what year did you say it was, lead was banned?
1989.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? All right, well, maybe if you wouldn't mind sending the list of resources to Michael and he could forward it to the council, so
Sure.
if we do get calls, we can direct them to a resource if they need it. That would
Yeah,
be
I mean, we
good.
can send you drafts of the letters before we send them out. I think that's,
Yeah, Lisa's drafting the letter now. We'll probably get that drafted and get it ready to go. And then I'll send whatever it ends up being out to you guys and with the resources. So you have all of those.
That'd be great.
and
And
I
this
think
is,
Lisa's working on some, she's gonna put some stuff on the webpage, some links to some stuff.
yeah, and just to state again, this is precautionary. These are unknown. People are gonna have to do a little bit of work on their own private lines to find out what's actually going on. But it's a requirement that OB has discovered that we do need to at least make them aware that it could be a possibility.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this doesn't put us responsible for their side of the line. We're just responsible to know what it is and to notify them and to connect them with resources to replace it if it is the lead line.
So at that point, will from the meter to the house be recorded by the city?
Yeah, it'll go on our map.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep track of it like every other part of our mapping system. Yeah.
Great. Anything else, council? Thank you,
Okay,
Obi.
thanks.
Jason, good to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
All right, next up, 4.1, presentation. This is Alexi is going to introduce our guests this evening that are going to talk about the energy audit that was just conducted, the findings and recommendations, and what they're looking for. What Alexi's looking for is some direction from you guys based on the recommendations that are going to be presented. And if, depending on where that conversation goes, we'll probably enter into a contract sometime in December. So there you go.
All right. So as you know, we have a goal as a city to cut greenhouse gases by 80% by 2040. And one of the most cost-effective ways to do that is to use less energy in the first place. So I've been working with McKinstry on auditing our buildings to look for places that we could reduce our energy and water use. And this evening we have Michael Reynolds and Jason Grooms with us to talk a little bit about the results of that audit and recommendations for the city.
Like Alexa said, I'm Jason Grooms, Michael Reynolds with me as well. Michael is program manager for us and handles all the engineering and development for our Salt Lake City office. We're here, like Alexi said, to give an update on some of the cool and sometimes really nerdy stuff that we've gotten into since about May. I'll start off with, there we go, just some quick background to color some of the conversation. But you all adopted the Sustainability Action Plan back in December, and that's when we kind of got into conversations with Alexi and team down in Moab. McKinstry is a design build energy service company. We focus on energy reduction, carbon reduction in the built environment. We're on the state of Utah cooperative contract for these services, which enables us to help public entities like Moab achieve some of these goals. So with that discussion, we kind of laid out some of the goals that we were trying to accomplish. The first and foremost, obviously, to advance the Sustainability Action Plan that you all adopted. Second, which is a cornerstone of every single one of our projects, is to significantly reduce utility spend for the city. Address deferred maintenance. Every single public entity has just a ton of deferred maintenance that is inherent in operations. just through no fault of anybody else. It's just a constant hassle that is tough to keep track of. Fourth, self-funded project. Everything that McKinstry does is entirely self-funded. All measures that we identify pay back for themselves in a certain period of time, which Michael will talk about later. And last, something that is a really strong community and city cross-contaminated win. Something that really improves the facilities that the community interacts with daily and that make really good financial sound sense.
And I would add that an energy audit was one of the recommendations in the Sustainability Action Plan, a place to begin with. And so this is the first, a report on that initial step and then where we can take it.
So as part of the audit, we audited every single one of the city-owned facilities. This includes the major ones like City Center where we are today, the MRAC, Public Works, Animal Shelter, the gym, and all these other ones down the line, including a couple of the parks and streetlights in general as well. Throughout this process, which I'll show you here in a second, we operated with Alexi as our primary point of contact, but we had many key check-in points with a lot of city staff. In the interim between those major checkpoints, Michael and his engineering team were interacting almost weekly with all these stakeholders on the right to share information, share concerns, and kind of iterate the process down as well. So this, a little bit busy, but just to kind of get you caught up on what we've been doing since today. We started off with a kickoff meeting back in May to identify the main objectives of what we were looking for. This had many of the key city staff in attendance during that. After that, we conducted all our site visits. We got a lot of preliminary ideation going with our engineers. We did a utility data analysis, which essentially takes all of your Rocky Mountain Power, your Dominion, all of your utility data and profiles it. And this is kind of the foundation on which we kind of get to work on. Came back for the 30% meeting, as we call it, again with a major city staff checkpoint. Ideated from there, iterated the energy conservation opportunities, did a lot of preliminary calculations, came back for the 60% a couple months ago. Again, pretty good checkpoint there. And from there, we have a really finely whittled list of the major financially attractive, city attractive projects within the energy audit itself. Michael and team created a request for proposals for qualified subcontractors to come down, price things out. And he's working with his team now to get those final calculations and costing together. We have a little bit of a preliminary look for you guys today, but just a little bit of a sneak peek prior to having everything finalized over the course of next month.
Yeah, so let me start kind of with a summary of what we found so far. We found that the city of Moab has an annual utility, natural gas and electricity cost of about $375,000. That's about 76% to electricity, to Rocky Mountain Power, about 24% to natural gas to Dominion, which has now been purchased and acquired by Enbridge. So they're changing their branding. And those energy baselines result in a carbon footprint of about 2,200 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. The measures and things we've found through our auditing process has identified roughly $88,000 in utility cost savings possible, which is about 23% of that existing utility budget. And those energy projects would translate to a carbon reduction of about 440 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is about 19% of the current baseline. So it gets you there. More specifically on what we've found. So again, looking at all of the city's buildings, we've found opportunities in most of them. Especially at the Recreation and Aquatic Center, we're looking very heavily into some recommissioning projects, which are low invasive adjustments to the way the building is controlled, to the set points, the schedules, making sure that those are up to date with the most recent recommendations from ASHRAE, making sure that those are aligned with actual use and schedules and for comfort. We are looking at ways to weatherize buildings. So that includes films on the windows. It includes door sweeps underneath the doors. It includes foam air sealing around cracks or gaps or penetrations along the walls. We found some major opportunities at the Aquatic Center around adding pool covers. So you have an outdoor lap pool and an indoor lap pool that could save significant amounts of natural gas and also significant amounts of water from the evaporation that happens pretty naturally there. So putting a pool cover on those, especially during the winter, will save significant amounts of energy. We've also found an opportunity there to generate sodium hypochlorite on site rather than purchase the dilute bleach product from Salt Lake City and truck it down. That is used to create the chlorine in the pool that sanitizes and neutralizes the odors and things in the pool. So there's a way to generate it on site, which saves the operation expense of purchasing that chlorine from Salt Lake City and trucking it down.
And Bree and Mark were, excuse me, Bree and Mark were very supportive of those two and really helpful in kind of fleshing those out a little bit. Those are really two solid, exciting ones.
Yeah. We've also looked at switching rates around on both the Rocky Mountain Power and the Dominion tariffs. You have several buildings that have large solar arrays existing, and so there are times of use rate schedules that could be attractive to some of these. We've also investigated what to do with streetlights. There are a couple of good options for saving both energy and money on both the city and the utility-owned streetlights around Moab. And so on the left are some of these really attractive measures that make a lot of sense just from the energy payback. You know, we can do these things and save a lot of money immediately, but we also have major capital upgrades that can help be financed by the energy savings from these really attractive measures. So that includes looking at it's a fluid cooler. It's essentially a cooling tower here at this building. It serves the ground source loop that does the heating and the cooling in all of the rooms. It's been broken and cracked for about 7 years after it froze. So replacing that isn't something that's going to pay for itself on energy, but will contribute to continued operation of this building. Kind of similar over at the Aquatic Center, there's an air handler that serves the fitness, the lobby, and the office area. We're looking at a replacement for that. It's at the end of its useful life. And then at the animal shelter, there's a makeup air unit that's oversized and is contributing to an inefficient operation of that building. So these are some projects that don't pay for themselves, but together we can help to address these deferred maintenance issues with the energy savings from these more attractive projects and kind of make it into a nice bundle that pays for itself in 12 years to 18 years, depending on how the city wants to approach these. So we have preliminary numbers right now to give you a preview. We're looking at about a project of $1.3 million in total. I'm still in the process of finding all of the utility incentives and rebates and grant opportunities that could bring that gross cost down to a net cost less than that. But we're looking at about $88,000 in savings per year. So that's a rate of return of about 6.7% on that investment, which also goes to help the city's sustainability goals. Two of the things that McKinstry also offers as part of our service is a guarantee on both the construction cost and on the savings. So that means that as we proceed to a contract with the city, we will have a part of that contract that says the cost is this, and we are guaranteeing that we will both deliver the project within that cost and in a way that will produce these $88,000 of contractually obligated savings. And if there's a shortfall in the savings, our options are either to pay out the difference or to do additional work to find additional savings. And then the other part of McKinstry's service is not only the design of the project, but the construction management. So we have a construction management team that is planning to be here on site, overseeing subcontractors, providing quality assurance of good work, and that these projects are installed and operated in a way that generates these savings. So kind of to recap these specifics, we're looking at overall emissions reduction of 19% by reducing energy use by 23%, producing savings of $88,000 per year that go to pay down the investment in these both energy and capital upgrades. So a pretty good return on investment for that. And also, by providing solutions to deferred maintenance, we're freeing up time that Chase and Levi and others can spend providing their service to other projects and things that they would otherwise have to be putting off to address running issues in this building and others, improved facility operations, and a wise, stewardship of the public facilities that, especially the MRAC, I think is probably the most visible public facility. The upgrades to make it both more comfortable and more efficient, demonstrate to city citizens that these facilities are, being maintained for their benefit and use.
And to do it in a way that is a financial investment, not a sunk cost for a typical capital upgrade. Last year, just wanted to outline the rest of the remaining steps, and then we want to reserve some time to take any questions you guys may have. So going from today, Michael and his team are going to be finalizing all of his costs, all of the construction costs, the energy, the final energy calculations. He's going to develop kind of a financial pro forma to show you guys what it looks like from a financial perspective. We'll take that. We're going to meet back with city staff mid-November, the 12th or the 13th, I think we're thinking right now, and present this, the latest and greatest to the city. Have some feedback sessions from there, make sure everything is good to go. And then that's when we get to the final phase of work, which is going to be somewhat on you all. The one point I want to start with here is the internal, external funding decisions. I know Mayor Langanese, you were at the CERTA presentation a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, whenever that was. There's a couple options that the city can do here for that 1.3 million, or what it turns out to finally be once he finishes up those counts. Obviously, there's a capital budget option to use your current allocated capital budget, especially some of the capital budget reserved for the MRAC upgrades to pay for this. There's also the option where you can use the energy savings that this project creates to pay for itself in a financing term. So banks do this. It's a process called a TELP, the tax exempt lease purchase. I will preface this by saying we're not fiduciaries, we're not your financial advisors, we're just presenting options. But this TELP mechanism enables entities to basically pay for these projects without any capital budget, only using the energy savings that McKinstry guarantees. So the benefit of that is you don't have to pay any upfront cost. The downside is you don't see that utility savings day one, because those utility savings are going to pay back the loan itself. As opposed to paying it with capital budget, day one, you get those energy savings, so your budget can be altered to reflect that.
There is a market for these TELP services. Typical interest rates we're seeing with other clients are 4 to 5%. So there's a cost of financing in that route, but they're very commonly used both in Utah and nationwide in these, especially when they're coupled with a guaranteed energy savings performance contract.
Yeah, the Department of Energy uses them very prolifically. And to Michael's point too, that cost of financing is included in the payback pro forma. So if that is a route the city goes, that the energy savings covers the cost of financing as well. So by no capital budget, there is no budget that needs to be infused by the city for something like this. So just to wrap up, Michael will finish up the guaranteed energy savings and construction costs. We'll have the guaranteed scope in front of you guys by this point as well. You'll get delivery of that final investment grade energy audit, showing the utility data analysis, showing your energy baseline, showing all the opportunities that we identified. And then hopefully we'll have that all in a nice, neat package for you guys, I think during your December 10th city council meeting to have a discussion about. And I think with that, any questions?
Alexi, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll add that before undergoing this process and starting the audits, I did talk to other people who've worked with McKinstry and Salt Lake City, Durango, and they deal with some of the things that we do with having limited staff to manage lots of projects. And one of the benefits that they saw was that a lot of things could happen within 2-3 years that would take us a really long time as staff to manage piecemeal. So that is another advantage of going this route to get some of these improvements on our buildings, is that they can happen faster and then we can see the energy savings more quickly.
Questions?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, general scope, obviously you're still working through specifics, but for that 1.3 million, is that inclusive of the energy savings upgrades and the capital? That is kind of that scope.
Yeah, that's a turnkey scope. It includes, the equipment, the installation, both commissioning services and M&V services.
Measurement and verification is M&V, as well as all the design services associated with that as well.
And then all of the design and design construction all included in that.
Okay. And so if we did this kind of, over time, this TELP process, how would you prioritize, or like, how would we work through that? Would we do all of this all
Yeah,
at once and then, okay. and then-
you would go out, public entities can go put out an RFP for financing. And so entities like Zions Bank or Bank of America can, bid on the rates when banks compete you in.
Okay.
Provide
so it's
the
more-
full $1.3 million, and then that goes to pay the project, and then the energy savings as they come in year by year go to pay off that loan.
The project
Gotcha.
itself, for the actual scope, construction, everything else is identical, regardless of how you fund it. It's still, as soon as you guys are ready, boots are on the ground doing the work and installing everything to reap the energy savings as quickly as possible. It's just a matter of if that energy savings is going to your bottom line because you've already paid capital budget for it, or if it's going to repay back the loan itself. So the execution is exactly the same.
Gotcha. Okay.
How long do you think it would take to go from start to finish, like on the project, once it was okay?
So I think for this, we'd be looking at about 4-ish months. So let's say contract is signed sometime, late December to early January. We'd probably be beginning construction sometime start of March, and then we'd be wrapping up probably towards the end of May.
So what about things like I look at this and I kind of go, wow, this is great. But as I think as a council and as a town have seen these issues that we're having, like with the MRAC, the potential, issues that need to be resolved with the MRAC, such as slumping, and stuff like that. Like, does it make sense to do a lot of this stuff before we fix the major problems, like with the MRAC? Does it make sense to fix the following foundation or, stuff, before we do this stuff, or can we do that stuff and then put off the other stuff until the stuff that you would do until those, fixes have been fixed, just that we have with the MRAC in
So
general?
the major,
Yeah,
the major
yeah.
maintenance.
So that we know, like MRAC mechanical upgrades. I don't know that we know what those are at this point, just with the MRAC where it is right now. So
Yeah, a couple comments on that. For the MRAC scope itself, we will have a delineated scope of work. This is kind of just high level stuff to where our engineers who are in that building know a lot of the pain points that exist mechanically. Totally hear you. There is a lot of structural concerns that we saw as well during those walks. I would say, I would hazard to guess that the city is going to go through with the structural upgrades, regardless, because those are going to be, foundational to keeping that building alive. The energy component and the operational and occupant comfort component, every year that you would wait there, you would be losing energy savings there. You would be losing that occupant experience there. And you would just, again, every year that you wait, equipment pricing goes up and everything else. So at the end of the day, the project might be more expensive.
And I don't think you would be losing an opportunity to do the structural amelioration by going through with these energy projects. You wouldn't be losing an opportunity if you pursued this. This would come at a mostly budget neutral approach for you. And so you could probably have them both and not have to put off one or the other to, make that building continue to be functional and operational for citizens.
okay. My other question was like the city center ground loop fluid that's been broken for 7 years or whatever it is. That's also tied into the library, correct?
Yes.
And so how would is there going to be a splitting of that, or is the county going to be kind of working with us as far as the ground loop fixing that? Because I know that's a big concern of theirs that they brought up.
Yeah,
You
we've
know.
actually had both Carrie Valdez and Sean Fugit from Grant County participate in our 60%. So they're aware that we're coming up with this shared project that impacts both of your buildings. So we've hinted that it's a shared project, and I think they've been pretty receptive and acknowledged that, you know,
Yeah, I think they threw out a number of like $645,000 or something to fix it, which is half of this whole project, almost, and so, just trying to figure out how that fits into all of this.
That definitely might be worthy of a follow-up conversation with the county. They're good.
So we definitely need to have that follow-up conversation. I know that they had reported to the county commission that they'd like to look at some other options as well. So they're in looking at other options. You have to assume they're talking about spending money on those other options. And what we'd like to talk to them about is why not help us and fix this problem? Yeah.
Because they're operationally, that ground loop is warming every year, and every year the performance is decreasing off of it, and there will be eventually at some point in the future a catastrophic a decline in that performance. That fluid cooler is going to bring down the temperature of that ground loop, so that these water source heat pumps in here and in the county library are not going to have those persistent maintenance concerns that Chase and Levi are constantly tackling. That should solve the issues operationally that especially the library sees, because I know they shut down 2 or 3 times every summer just due to heat related concerns. So I think a conversation between us, you guys, and them would be pretty beneficial. For sure. Share some costs. Yeah.
And the other capital upgrades, were these on our radar, or these were just brought to our attention by these? I hadn't heard about the pump, or I'm sorry, the loop fluid cooler. Or were we aware of these other capital, or, I mean, were these things eminent anyway?
The ground loop fluid cooler, I believe it's been broken for 7 years. I think we've known about it for 7 years. And so it hasn't been functioning appropriately or functioning properly for 7 years. And I think this is just an example of deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
Where it needs.
And the, more specifically, the other two, I mean, these things are things that we're gonna need to fix anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been aware of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just to reiterate what they were saying, as far as the pool goes and the structural improvements that need to be made there, doing these would not negate those. I think they're a different track, and because they've shown that we could potentially pay for these, if that turns out to be the case, then it wouldn't affect our ability to do those structural changes or improvements any more than whatever is affecting our ability to do that right now already is. So.
Right. Yeah. My concern was like, oh, we're doing all these upgrades and we don't even know what the structural upgrades are at this point. So are we putting the cart before the horse? Are we painting the walls before they're up? Was kind of my concerns. But if they can all be done at the same time, then yeah.
Yeah, and it even sounds like if we're able to get these done ahead of time before those, I'm assuming those are going to be pretty expensive, that we might be able to use like the energy savings to kind of help finance like all of those major structural improvements.
Yeah, I think the energy, well, yeah, we could look at that for sure. We could definitely look at that. But I believe the way that they're showing us the payback period is based on us using all of the energy savings until we pay back the amount that we'll be expending for this project. And then after that, we would have those savings.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you were to pay capital budget, it is completely up to the city with how you recognize those energy savings, right?
Yeah.
You could just write off that 1.3 million and say that was just sunk cost, and then use the energy savings to help seed fund something else.
Sure.
If you are financing it, you are, locked into the energy savings being earmarked for that financing agreement.
Yeah. It's kind of pick which one.
Yeah.
You're going to pay cash for and which one you're going to finance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And on our part, it's completely agnostic towards that, whatever's best for the city.
So is the chlorine regenerator, is that switching it over to salt water, or is it just?
No, so currently you guys are buying kind of a dilute bleach solution that's brought from Salt Lake City. This would be generating a sodium hypochlorite solution in the mechanical room at the MRAC, and just replacing the purchase and bring it here with generating it there. It wouldn't be converting it to salt. It would just be the same bleach solution that would release the chlorine that does the sanitation for the pool, just made instead of bought.
And mainly those transportation costs are the killer on the buying.
Anything else? What would you like to do?
Everything.
I'd like to proceed.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah,
great,
for sure.
great opportunity, and especially if we can engage the county and come up with some kind of partnership in there, and, yep.
all right. So there you have it. And then Michael, you and David will come up with a recommendation for how we want to pay for it.
Yes.
And so I guess we will see you all again, and will you be giving us an update, or will we just have that discussion in December?
I think Alexia will probably come back and we'll be able to put the financing part on to the recommendation and we'll go from there.
So our next meeting or December?
It's probably December.
I think December will be our next big update.
Right.
I will be at the next meeting, so if there are some other things, I can also.
Okay.
Yeah, and then by December, do you think you would have the actual the cost as you were
Yeah.
talking?
We anticipate having that actually this week, the costs, and then the whole project kind of developed to like a 90% for presentation to the city staff, November 12th and 13th, and then any final requests or tweaks from the city staff at that 90% progress meeting is what would change between that and the city council presentation on December 10th.
One of the things that came up at the CERTA meeting was the more buildings we have, the better cost savings. And I know that the county commissioner said we should be working on this together. My concern is that we're kind of way ahead of the game. And I don't know that we want to, I mean, it'd be great to collaborate them on their buildings as well, but I'm concerned because of the situation at the county that it might stall out, like you said, and end up costing us more money in the long run. So my hope is that we can negotiate the fluid
Yeah.
loop thing with them without going down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
Okay.
Michael, I'd also like to see some outreach, because as much community feedback as we have gotten over,
Doug.
Oh, Doug.
for the MRAC.
Game two.
What's the score, Doug?
The
As-
outreach.
As much feedback as we've gotten for this whole summer about the MRAC, I'd really like to see some outreach to the community, because we will get, you're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah,
And we need to explain the rationale that we went through to do this, that we're not neglecting the structural integrity of the building. It's coming. These don't hamper those projects. I just think the community will want to know, or we need to have a good way to explain it to them.
So, and when we come back, I think we should talk about the cart and the horse together probably, and talk about just everything together and how we think we're going to accomplish the other part, so that it doesn't happen independent and then people are wondering if we just forgot it. So
Okay, thank you.
I don't know that we'll have a solution, I guess I should say, but we can talk about it together. And if there is a solution, we can discuss it at that point.
Okay.
One more question for Alexi. So this is going towards the city's net zero by 2030 goal. I'm wondering, and you might not have the answer tonight, but how are we doing towards that goal? How much further will this take us? How much further do we have to go?
Yeah, I'm going to do, so 2025, we'll be doing another greenhouse gas inventory with 2024 data. So we'll have a better idea when that's complete, how we're doing overall on emission reductions. And then the calculations that they brought us are for strictly just the city's emissions. So I think it was 19%, is that correct? Yeah, so it'll help us 19% on our own emissions strictly, but the community-wide one, I'll come back when I have the 2024 numbers calculated, and we can look at, we'll have 3 greenhouse gas inventories at that time and maybe have more data points to make a comparison.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, for the MRAC in terms of like messaging, is there any way that any of these changes and upgrades would help minimize like service disruption or anything like that? I know sometimes it's a staffing issue, but
Yeah, I mean, part of this are pumps, right? And getting better equipment, I mean, should help with that in the long run. But yeah, I think most of the service disruptions we're seeing, and remember, I'm new to the job, I'm
Yeah.
still learning, but I think most of the disruptions we're seeing and what most pools are seeing is just having to do with staffing.
Lifeguards.
But I think it sounds like to me that it will have a profound effect on like pool temperature and
Right.
comfort which we hear a lot about.
Even cleanliness with the outside pool covers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What I would say is that putting a pool cover onto a pool reduces the rate of evaporation of water out of that pool by about 90%. And so for the outdoor pool, it's strictly for the energy savings, but for the indoor pool, that evaporating water is also carrying with it the chlorine. And so reducing the evaporation out of the indoor pool puts less chlorine into the air, so that odor is less, onto the bather. It also, chlorine is a really aggressive chemical. So the air handler and the air distribution throughout that building will be benefited by having less chlorine free and present in the air. And so that also, less evaporation into the air means that the relative humidity is better able to be controlled. So minimizing those sources of discomfort and long-term, the chlorine can actually interact with the metals of the ducts. So there are other benefits besides just the energy, especially on the indoor pool, that covering it will have more of an effect than just energy as well.
Like I said, we get into some cool and nerdy stuff. But and one more note on marketing too. We do campaigns frequently with our projects with students and school districts, with staff and cities, with communities. So any support that we can provide during this, we're more than willing to do that.
Very good. Anything else? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank
See you in a month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I know. 2 meetings. We only have 2 more meetings.
Yeah.
Excuse me. All right, moving on. Consent agenda items 5.1, 5.2, approval of the minutes from the October 8th regular city council meeting and approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $896,883.76. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Jason, second.
And second that,
Second by Colin. Discussion, Jason?
No.
Colin?
yes, that new street sweeper, can we see that out on the streets immediately if it's in hand? There is a huge bill for a part of the billing was for the street sweeper.
The new suite, yep.
Yeah, and so I don't know if we have that on hand yet or.
I'm not sure if we have it on hand yet or not either, but as soon as we have it, I'm sure it'll be on the street
Yeah.
being used as a better stereo than the old one. So,
It does? Okay.
yeah, so,
Well, and we'll be able to operate it, right?
Yeah.
So-
sure.
So
I'll operate it.
can we?
You guys can operate the Zamboni, but not the,
Got it.
All right, so we have a new street sweeper, which is part of the reason the bills are so high. Thank you for being so detailed, Colin.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, motion by Jason, second by Colin. All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to general business. This is our big ticket item of the day besides paying the bills. It is consideration of a task order for professional services with Civil Science Incorporated for the design of the 300 South Mill Creek Bridge Replacement Project in the amount of $626,300. Now, just as a reminder, this is a project that you all supported as your #1 priority project for flood mitigation in our capital improvement plan. This came about this summer after all the floods we had. So this is a big project. It is a big ticket item. I know you guys had some concern about the design process at our last meeting from 100 East, but keep in mind, this is a bridge. It's a pretty big project. And we are looking to try to get federal funding and other funding sources. So that's why we're kind of moving this forward, because we can't really go for any money unless we have some sort of design. So Mark, did I say that all correctly? I'm sure you'll update it even better than me.
Yeah, I think that was succinct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so
Okay. Yeah.
You're up.
I'll kind of back up and sort of readdress why we want the bridge in the first place. The hydraulics of the existing bridge are not necessarily the deal breaker of what we already have. The problem, if you all probably vividly recall, I think everybody's seen it now, is that the triple culvert under there does plug when debris comes down. So we could get very lucky in one storm and it passes all the water, and get very unlucky in another when the tree comes along that plugs it up. To fix that, to address that, I should say, we are looking at doing a single span. So that would mean no piers in the middle, a span that runs from abutment to abutment on either side. So we get all the available capacity out of that bridge. That could involve, now there's still some questions as to what we end up needing. That could involve a higher road surface potentially. That's yet to be determined. I'm just throwing that out there just so everybody kind of, has that on their radar. And the reason that is because we may have to provide thicker girders to make that span, right? But that'll all kind of come out in the design. We will be more or less following the existing road section as it is. We will be looking to preserve the path under the bridge as well, providing lighting under the bridge, and also accounting for utilities around the bridge. There's the potential here, though this isn't exactly a guarantee right now, just because of the complicated nature of the bridge and the potential federal funding or state or federal funding that we may be getting. There's the potential that if the timing works out, 100 East and the bridge may be happening at the same time. That may be a good thing. We may choose to phase them separately. That's something that we still need to think about. What else do I say? That actually probably covers it pretty good. Yeah.
question, I know you guys have questions about this. I do know that in your packet at the last meeting, you guys wanted a little more detail on the specifics of the cost. And so that's included in your packets where Mark has kind of detailed what the cost is for each service that we're getting. So I'll open it up for questions from you all.
Got a question. And thank you for that added detail. And it really, when we're looking at that greater cost, it's really important for me to see just how many different consultants and all these people who are, we sort of assembled the dream team, it seems like. My concern in the way it's worded in the task order is that they could look at a further reach of the stream, both upstream and downstream. And I think several of us have this concern that if we do increase the capacity of that underpass and keep Mill Creek in its channel in these big flood events, what that will mean for downstream in areas where it's already causing problems, to have that additional water kept in the channel. And so while we have this team assembled, can we possibly look at a little bit further downstream and just increase the scope of the project a little more holistically?
Yeah, it may make the whole thing a bit more, I don't know what the word here is, digestible or tackleable if we break it up into smaller chunks. Right now, we have we're working on where the pathway fell away by the vet clinic there. That's a separate bit that's getting worked on. And we've been talking about
there's all sorts of things that we could do to the channel downstream from there. We, I'm not sure that there's a lot of value added if we try to lump it into this project, if that's what the question was. Yeah. But we're certainly looking at doing that in any case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I talk about downstream, I just mean really just down to where water leaves towards 100 East.
Oh, okay, yeah, down by the Groff Park. Yeah.
Skills Park in that area.
Yeah. That, yeah, we'll probably need, we've been talking about looking at that as well. But, yeah, lumping it in with this project, I'm not sure that we get any, added benefit out of that.
So just to follow up on that, there's a larger review going on right now with one of these pre-vetted consultants that we're using here, Bowen Collins, and they are actually looking at above and below and potentially making some recommendations to the city and to the county and frankly to the state as well regarding those areas. Those won't be the design plans. They'll be recommending kind of what we could potentially look at for design to increase channel capacity and things like that. And then from there, we would have to go into another design process. But there's work going on up and down the creek right now. And this is just one of the pieces. And because it's such a big one and it does require such specialized work, we are using people who are already working on the creek, but we're not having them do all of it all at once, doing this one separate and do the other ones as separate contracts as well.
Got it. Thank you. That's a great explanation.
Yeah, I think it's a big distinction because I kind of look at this and go like, oh, we're getting this bridge, which is great, and I think we all agree that it's kind of needed, or we all kind of know that it's needed and stuff. But then you got, as far as this bigger project, like Colin said, and then I kind of look at this and go, it's like, oh, we're gonna get done with this, and we're gonna have this super nice bridge that what. Do you know what like the CFS that we're trying to accommodate or what the plan is?
We'll do a hydraulic evaluation there, but it should pass the 100-year, I believe, is what we have for there. Yeah.
So we're gonna have like this arcing bridge, I assume, and then it's gonna, in the middle of this street, does it make sense to then, look at mitigation going upstream, before you get to your bridge mitigation, like Colin said, downstream. And then the road itself, is like, are we gonna at some point within this project go like, hey, maybe we should repave this road, from, 4th East down, or something, because it's it's getting to be in pretty bad shape as well, and the whole 3rd South. And so I just want to make sure that we do this project that I feel like, this Pandora's box, like, oh, we're going to get into all these different things as we get into this project, and we're prepared for that, which I think we are,
Yeah.
we need to be.
The bridge is a really great, so I'll kind of throw this out there, this idea that we have a lot of these potential solutions. Bowen Collins is developing something of a master plan. They don't call it a master plan, but it's this kind of thing that proposes all sorts of different treatments in different areas. The 3rd South Bridge is a really nice one because I don't want to make it sound overly simple, but it's comparatively drag and drop. We really just need to clear out the span of that thing. The fairly straightforward, so the relatively straightforward solution is put a clear span over that. So this is something that we can do at least conceptually simple in that way. Whereas in a lot of other places, things get real complicated real fast. I'm not saying the project is not complicated, but it's modular almost in a way. We have a relatively simple problem, and we just need to drop in a clear span and get that debris through there.
I think what you're asking too is, once we do that, is there any plans to like look at that whole 300 South Road? Because we're gonna have this nice bridge.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking us to look at.
Oh.
We get this bridge done. Let's look at 300 South, because
Yeah.
I'm assuming this bridge is going to be, it'll have some sort of bike path on it, like we would hope it'd be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Green.
Yeah.
Complete,
streets.
yeah,
You know, this bridge is gonna be complete streets and then it's not gonna be complete streets on the rest of it, you know? And I drive down that road every day. It's pretty bumpy. It's pretty rough, you know, it's maybe when we get done with this, we looking at whether we need to mill and fill or redo that whole street
Right.
to make it a complete street, not just a complete bridge, but a complete street.
right. I think we can definitely parcelize that piece of it too, so that it can be part of it as well. But yeah, we will be redoing surfaces and changing cross-section for the bridge portion. And the bridge portion is actually an entire block. It's going to be from First East to Second East. Not the bridge itself, but the portion that we're going to be disrupting and rebuilding as far as the street and then going into the structure itself. So looking at the rest of the street would make a lot of sense at the same time. I don't think we would go back and modify this contract right now. I do think with, like I was saying, with these pre-vetted consultants that we have, like Civil Science, who also functions as our city engineer, we could add that on at another time, or we could look at different contractors as well.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I'm asking, you know, it's just like, hey, we got this bridge, now the next part of it, let's look at the street itself. Let's look at what's going on in Mill Creek upstream and downstream. So we're directing water, where it needs to be, and it's just not like this bridge plopped there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important comment that you made is, and it sounds like you're looking at that. You and I've talked about it. Once we do this, let's make sure, that we're not waiting for the flood to come.
Yeah.
That ends up plowing through Dewey's and Center Street.
Yeah. This is one thing of a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that's being addressed, because that was like one of the things that I've heard the most regarding the bridge is just like that flow over onto 300 kind of took away some of the water. And so we're going to have more water potentially going through there. And like, what kind of impact is that additional force going to have over this sustained period of time? But no, I agree about kind of looking at the 300 South. It's kind of just, if there's already going to be equipment and all that stuff that could be used for that, it might be cost savings.
Is this something, Michael, that when we do strategic plan, that we, at that point, we can kind of give direction that this is something that we want to modify in our strategic plan? I don't even know if it's on the CIP list.
So for the bridge or for everything?
Everything.
Okay. So there's a lot of things going on right now. Like I said, Bowen Collins has been engaged by the state of Utah to come in and to help the county and the city out with doing kind of a master plan like we were talking about. It doesn't say how to do something. It says what could possibly work. From that, we can take those things, we plan to take those things and turn those into a process as well for design and move forward with those. And then get all of those things presented at some point, but they might be on different tracks, but some will take a little bit longer, others won't. Some will be very intensive on public outreach, because if what we end up doing is channelization and using more of how do you put this, impermeable surface through the town itself, that's going to be some people are going to want to comment on. It's also going to change our active transportation network. And, but I hear what you're saying. I think we can address those things in strategic planning, because with the work we're doing with Bowen Collins, with the state, with FEMA, and all the other evaluations we're doing, we should have a pretty good handle on timelines and what the projection looks like for getting some of these things done. The projects, planning is one thing, getting the projects funded is a totally different thing. So,
and I think this is a big deal to get this funded, getting the plan funded, so that we can go out and find federal funding for it. So I think that's the keystone to this whole thing is this bridge, and trying to get the funding.
Right.
Yeah. And this like design would come out of like our general fund, right?
It will. Yeah, it will. And this is kind of, think of it as match. If we can get the project ready, that's shovel ready, that we can put out there and potentially get federal funding for, which we do have representatives from FEMA we are working with and we're talking to, and then also through other channels as well. It just makes it more likely that we're actually going to be able to do something as opposed to saying we really need a bridge. We need to design it first, but could we get the money now? You know, designing it and then getting it out there makes it more likely that we're going to get the money for construction.
Do you know what the timeline is for them to have like something back to us if we do approve it tonight?
Yeah, so we're looking at having bid set plans at the earliest. Yeah, if you're reading the task order, it says in the spring. It's probably more realistically the summer at this point. And that would be at the very earliest, because the way I kind of understand this working is that we'll probably start shopping around, searching for funding when we're around 30%. We'll be talking to folks. And there's the potential that, you know, if we get into that federal process, that it'll extend to the design
So we
period.
won't even have a design until the spring? Or
No,
spring?
it'll be most of 2025 that will be in design.
Okay. Okay, so this is a 2026, 2027 project.
Probably, yeah.
That's what we were told, it's like 2 or 3 years.
So hopefully it won't be happening the same.
Yeah,
time 100 West. will.
Exactly, that's exactly what I thought. Not be happening.
No, yeah, at the very,
What's that?
100 East. and
100
Dodge.
East, yeah.
Hopefully
100 East will be done.
Oh,
100 East will be done.
100 East will
Yeah,
be done
good.
by.
Is there any way, and we'll talk about this in strategic plan too, that some of these upstream, downstream issues can be addressed before we even put the bridge in?
It's possible, yeah.
Which would be great, because I know that that's an ongoing issue, and if there's a way that we can mitigate that in advance.
Yeah, I like the way Mark said it. Was it plug and play or drag and drop?
oh, drag and drop.
Drag and
yeah.
drop.
Plug and
So-
play is probably better. Yeah.
So a lot of the things that we end up doing are going to be plug and play for their own section. And if we can get one done before the other, it will still be beneficial. The bridge is just an issue because we can fix everything below stream, but it's still going to jump. It's below 300 East, but it's still going to jump at, or sorry, 300 South. It's still going to jump at 300 South until we get the capacity there.
And it's
And-
kind,
And if we, I mean, it doesn't actually work, if we make improvements downstream of that bridge before we do it and it jumps and it can't get back into its channel, we're creating it. Yeah, so there has to be some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
order to the madness.
yeah, so there's definitely method to the madness. We want to address downstream by the time the bridge is done so that as the capacity comes through, it doesn't all end up on 100 East. And so there's a lot to think about, but getting moving is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. One more plug. So as we're talking about, and I was glad to hear you say something to this point, you know, in the task order, it talks about how there may be a pathway included in that. So I was glad to hear you say that there will be. And I know I've talked to you about this, but if we could look at the example of the Main Street Bridge and the issues we have with keeping that pathway clear and clean and hopefully to wrap that into some kind of the design elements or encourage that to be wrapped in some kind of the design
Oh,
elements.
yeah.
Just to keep that pathway, you know, I understand that with
Yeah.
6,000 or 7,000 CFS, all bets are off, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that may be why civil science settled on calling it May, was that we were still going to kind of talk about how the path was even meant to function. You know, I think, you know, there was, when I was communicating to them, I was probably saying something like, hey, we need to make this path work. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, and it's going to be
Sure.
covered in silt all the time. So, but no, we're going to put that path back there. Yeah. In some form or another.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Let's just hope that we don't have another big flash flood for a couple years, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna ask for a motion.
Somebody else.
I move to approve the attached task order for professional services with Civil Science Incorporated for the design of the 300 South Mill Creek Bridge Replacement Project in the amount of $626,300 and authorize the mayor to sign it.
Motion by Caitlin. Do I have a second?
I can second that.
Second by Colin. Discussion, Caitlin? Nope. Colin?
None.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a slightly better pill to swallow than the last one that was on the agenda. It's still a lot of money, and it blows me away that things cost this much money, but I can understand this when we're building bridges through towns and stuff, so. That's all I have to say. I wish it was cheaper.
Anybody else? All right, roll call vote. Caitlin,
Aye.
Colin,
Aye.
Connie, aye. Luke.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
We're building bridges.
Yep.
Hmm.
This is a good thing. This is something that's needed, been done since twenty
First we gotta
twenty-two.
break 'em.
All right, thanks,
First we
Mark.
gotta
Nice
break 'em.
job.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, moving on. City manager update.
Oh, yes. That's me.
Right. By the
So,
way.
yeah. So just a couple of updates really quick. Several months ago, as a result of the first flooding that we experienced, the city council adopted a resolution to waive building permit fees for people who have need building permits because of the disasters that we experienced. The one that we've seen the most improvements on homes for or addressing destruction of homes, for lack of a better term, was from the hail. And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people are getting their roofs done right now, and it's happening all over the place. We usually do about 10 to 15 roof permits per year, and we've been doing 60 a month.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of it going on right now. We've waived about $9,000 worth of building permit fees, and a building permit fee for a roof is basically just the inspection is about $65. So it's a lot. We've done a lot of these, and there's probably more to come. We'd like to keep that waiver in place for the time being because people are still working with insurance companies and things like that and coming in. And we'd like to just be able to confirm that the damage that they're experiencing was caused by natural disasters, and then we can just proceed and waive those fees for them. So we'll keep that in place for a little while, and it's done some good. And it's good to see that the insurance companies are responding and getting a lot of this work done. So Mill Creek and Cane Creek, we've had questions on that. We've had several questions over the last few meetings. We do anticipate that the contractor for Mill Creek will be able to get to the project this year. There's still unforeseens. We don't know everything that could potentially happen between now and when they get out there, but the contractor is hoping that weather will hold. They're predicting that it will, and that they'll be able to have their batch plant open longer. And in fact, they're even looking at opening a second batch plant so they can do more of this paving. The same goes for Cane Creek. The hope is that we can get to it this year. I can report that Dominion, we were waiting on gas, underground gas lines being completed. Those were completed, I was told today. And so now it's just a matter of getting the road base in and some curb and gutter, things like that, and getting ready for paving, and then getting the paving out there. So those are moving forward, and we're doing the best that we can, but we are at the mercy of the weather and asphalt, and and the people who put it down. So just a note, the Rocky Mountain power poles that you had talked to us about and had us send a letter on. I think it was reported today by Alexi that 5 of those have actually been worked on and been repaired so far. So you guys are
Nice.
See, and it wasn't
Yeah.
even a mean letter.
Yeah. So good job. So definitely seeing some work going on that and some good stuff coming from your letter. One other thing, we always bring up the subdivision ordinance every time we come to you with a subdivision that we need you to approve. I can tell you that we actually have a draft of the subdivision ordinance, and we will be bringing that to you in your December meeting for adoption, so we can get that approved before the end of the year. So it will actually happen.
So you won't be seeing lot line adjustments, any of those administrative things that I always say, you won't be seeing.
The last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the last one. I think we have said that. This will be the last time you see any of these, but This will be the last time you hear about subdivisions. So believe that's the December 10th meeting. And I believe that's it for updates from me. I will do one other update. I was at the Mountain Towns 2030 conference last week with Alexi and David Everett. It was a great conference, learned a lot of stuff, heard about what other communities are doing that are a lot like us, and some of the struggles they're dealing with are the same as ours. But got a lot of really good information, and we'll be talking about that more and seeing what we can talk about with you, and it'll be coming up. Strategic planning is probably when you'll be hearing most of that. So
Great.
Michael, with Mill Creek, because they're extending the season, so we don't know if this is gonna happen early November, late November, mid-December. Can we get some temporary painting done on the intersection of Fourth East and Mill Creek? And I think whatever community member painted the intersection, the arrows at the road up to Sand Flats, where it goes up to Sand Flats, has shown us an example of how temporary painting can be done effectively. Because I've gotten a couple communications from residents where they've been waiting in that line for lines of UTVs that are in the right lane turning left, or it's been kind of a mess with how busy town has been.
I'll talk to our streets people, see what we can do, see if we can have something temporary we can put down. I'll see what we can do.
I mean, can it just be a rattle can and some just
drawn? I'm hesitating just a little bit because whenever our staff goes out to do these things, they have to follow the MUTCD standards. And
it's never
so
as easy as we think.
and which shouldn't be that difficult. I just need to make sure that they can get out there and do it. And they have the stencils, they can put them down and paint them and everything. So
okay.
So it's unfortunately it's not as easy for us to go out with the rattle can and just paint an arrow. And that wasn't us who did that.
Yes, it definitely was not.
But yeah, so I'll talk to our staff and see what we can get accomplished.
Yeah, and if it's as complicated as going out there with stencils or whatever, I understand
It's
there's
not
cost
stu-
associated with
Yeah.
it.
It's not super complicated. I just want to check with them before I
it.
say, yes, we will absolutely 100% do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Council reports. We'll start with you, Lou.
So I attended the local homeless council meeting. There wasn't too much to update upon. The San Juan County recently started an LHC and they've started participating in our meetings. We just kind of talked a little bit about the multi-site tour that was attended by members of the LHC from seven separate agencies. I think we're looking into setting that up with some of the other participating organizations. And then in November, we're going to be receiving a presentation from the health department regarding changes to the housing health code regulations that could affect renters and landlords. And then just to remind everybody, Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, will be happening Sunday the 27th between 1 and 5 p.m. Then I attended the GWISA meeting. So for all of the boards on there, there's going to be a public budget hearing on December 19th at 7 p.m. We kind of went through a lot of the repairs that a lot of them have been done as a result of the last storm that caused the floods. There's still more to be done. So far, we've paid for $72,000 in repairs. There was also a lightning strike on one of the, forget what it is. It's one of like the little buildings that they have to get, that did about $12,000 in damage as well. And then GWISA finally received FOIA back about the water pipeline that the DOE has been using. I guess within the documentation, there was kind of it sounds like they kind of wrote in a right of first refusal for the county and a special service district to be able to take it over. And I guess that pipeline comes with 600 acre feet of water. So potentially some more water. The can get brought into the community. We were told that October 31st is the first projected freeze of the season for anybody out there. WISA has updated its website, so it's now ADA compliant and just way more functional and easily navigable. I think that's it. And then I attended the commission debate. But
Thanks, Luke. Connie.
I attended the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District Board meeting on the 11th. It was quite exciting. We slogged through our budget for next year, and the budget for the district is set to go to public hearing at our December meeting on the 12th of December. And we also, the board recommended Camille Trujillo and Ken Valentine to be board members to the county commission. And it seems like it went on a whole lot longer than that. Yes. I think that's about it.
Thanks, Connie. Jason.
All right, I attended, the Indigenous Peoples' Day. I read the proclamation. It was a good time. Colin and I,
Ooh,
had a lot of fun there. What's that?
I said you too. You're trouble.
I cannot make fry bread. I was made fun of and ridiculed because my fry bread.
Well, hopefully you
Not
didn't blow
very
the proclamation.
It was a tough proclamation.
It was
You
tough.
read it? Yeah.
But it was good. It was a lot of fun. It was a great event, and there was a lot of people there, and having a deep garden project was great, I thought. And so, I attended a chamber board meeting, and they kind of debriefed the commission debate, which I thought that they did a great job with facilitating and doing. I also attended the commission debate meeting, where I was
Were you a bouncer?
I was a bouncer, yeah, and luckily it was fairly good. I think if I had tried to throw anyone out, they just laughed at me. The mustache didn't help. But the chamber is having on November 9th, they are having their annual chamber banquet. And this year it's going to be at the Hoodoo. So if you guys can make it, it's a lot of fun. It's a really great event, and it really helps the chamber, and it's a great event. I attended an EMS board meeting where they took delivery of a new ambulance, which is great because they've had a few ambulances. Their ambulances are getting old, they're getting a lot of miles on them. They had an ambulance break down on the side of the freeway, or a highway a couple weeks ago. And so these are coming at a very good time where, where it's very needed. It should be here. I think it'll be here at the end of this week. It was getting decaled, and then it's coming down, and then they're getting another one in another couple weeks and stuff. But it's amazing how many runs EMS is doing, and how many transfers they're doing for people to other hospitals and stuff. I planned to attend the Los Colinas park tour, but it got canceled due to the weather that came in. And that is it.
Thank you. Caitlin.
I also attended LHC and the chamber debate. I thought it was great. On the 9th, I did a little guest DJ spot on KZME Sport Radiothon, which was really fun. Had some conversations with Mary O'Brien, sent a lot of that to you today. I don't know how that ties into the work that Bowen Collins is doing or anything, but forwarding along another resource to help with some wildfire and flood mitigation. I helped to host a site tour for the NAR Base Camp conference last week. We did a tour of Murphy Flats and of Arroyo Crossing, showcasing to community development experts across the Intermountain West what we're doing in Moab for housing, which is really fun. And then today I attended a CDBG pre-application workshop. Yes, Richard was there as well. So we had a brief conversation. We should probably also talk about, doing the first public notice requirement. The CERTA people made it pretty clear that they want the first public hearing ideally in November, December, don't really want to push all the way to the end of January. So we should talk about timing for that, but that's just general public hearing to solicit projects. And then I voted today. So highly encourage everyone to vote.
Thank you, Caitlin. Colin.
I attended the commission debate. And then on the 14th, I attended the Indigenous Peoples' Day where I did not mess up my fry bread. No, you had good fry bread.
How do you mess up fry bread?
Exactly. Thank you, Tony.
I'm like, even I can cook fry bread.
15th, I attended the Lights On celebration for Beacon for the after school program. And thinking about the Indigenous Peoples' Day and the Lights On and so many other community events, I just want to give a big shout out to our very own Detective Robert Sterry, because he is at every single community event and he donates his photography to nonprofits, to all the nonprofits in town. And if he's not taking pictures, he's just there in attendance and just such an amazing part of this community. And yeah, it's so neat to see him there. And the rest of the police force is often in attendance. On the 16th, I had a solid waste district meeting and just want to ask the community to be patient with the transition of the billing and the new software that solid waste is working on. There is an end in sight. There's light somewhere. And so they're just kind of working out all the kinks, but I know it's been coming with great frustration to the community. And so hopefully it'll be sooner than later.
Colin, on that, how do we reach out to request information about how to use the website? Like, are there resources for how to?
So I think what's happening now is that the resources are not working and that people are just having to call solid waste and actually talk to a person.
So the contact us I sent potentially didn't get through.
I also sent one.
Probably not. No, I think that they just added 2 more customer service representatives and to try to accommodate, all the calls that are coming in, but they're just really fighting this software. But are so far into it now that it's just really, they're past the point of turning around. So, the 22nd, 22nd today, Moab City and Solid Waste, the new district manager, Chris Scoville, met with Michael and Alexi, and we had a great conversation about just all the potential there and just this new partnership, and mostly just introductions. And then after that, I had an UMTRA steering committee meeting, and that is it for me.
Thank you, Colin.
Yep.
For me, I also attended the tailings project committee meeting today. That was very exciting to hear that they have moved 15 million tons. There's only 1 million ton left to move. So they anticipate that project, the contamination cleanup will be done by mid 2027 and that they will be closing the site in 2029. So it's amazing to me that we're actually going to be alive to see that project completed. But we have the Atlas Park Committee meeting, which is this Friday at 10:30, and that's kind of a committee that's really looking at the future of that site and grant funding that we can get to develop it, and also to work on the transfer to the city or the county or both. I also attended the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District meeting, and you're right. I was like, what did we talk about? Because it seemed to go for a long time, but it's always a good meeting. The care center's doing really great. I think they're a pretty solid district right now. And that's good to hear. They're planning, if they can, to pay off one of their CIB loans, which is great for the care center building. So, splitting 50-50 with EMS, it's a good timing for that. I'm glad we could do that because they're both really valuable districts for our community. Meeting with Michael a lot as usual, staff meetings, got a lot to share with you guys with some ideas that Michael has. So look for the email from Sasha to coordinate meetings with me next week and the week after, because we don't have another city council meeting until November 12th. So we've got some time, but I have a lot to catch you guys up on. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you next week or the week after. So we have time. So just figure out what works with your schedule. I'm also meeting with our lobbyist on the 29th of October to discuss legislative issues. We also have lobbyists that we're going to be working with in Washington, DC. We felt like it was important to get them on board so that we could start, have them help us with funding opportunities for flood mitigation and for the tailings pile stuff and whatever else we need to be talking to them about. So you'll be hearing more about that. But it'll be interesting to meet with our lobbyists on the 29th to kind of gauge what we anticipate the legislatures are going to do with Grant County this year. I also voted today, so everybody please go out and vote. Very important election this year, so vote. And that's all from me. We did have two executive sessions on the purchase and exchange of real property and pending litigation, but we're gonna not have those meetings because we didn't have the information we needed to share with you all. So more to come on that. But with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Motion by
Second.
Connie, second by Luke. All in favor?